If you were to infiltrate a system, which of the cybersecurity networks would you attack first? More precisely, what do you think is the weakest link in cybersecurity? Weak passwords, outdated operating systems, sites without security certificates, none of them. In 2014, in the middle of the night in Russia, the phone rang at Kaspersky Lab, a famous antivirus company. When the operator answered the phone, the person on the other end was a bank employee with the world's most nervous and scary voice. This person, who works for one of the biggest banks in Russia, was very afraid of something, but whatever had happened had made him so paranoid that he didn't want to continue the interview over the phone and asked for an urgent face-to-face meeting. When Kaspersky's antivirus experts arrived on the scene, the bank employee feared that his work computer had been corrupted or hacked in some way. At first, they didn't find anything on the computer. The computer was working normally, but as the investigations deepened, they realized that the bank's domain controller had been hacked and was sending highly confidential and sensitive information to a server in China. A domain controller is the most sensitive and most important server in a business. If you own the domain controller of any business, you have access to every device in that business, and if you own the domain controller of a bank, you own that bank in a sense. Owning a domain controller means you can add millions or even billions of dollars to the balance of any bank customer and withdraw it to a bank in your own country using SWIFT, the international money transfer system. It means being able to take money out of a bank's ATMs whenever you want. In short, it means being able to rob a bank without firing a single bullet. This group, which had a domain controller, did not touch any data or systems in the bank or withdraw any money from the bank. This may seem like a good thing, but in fact it was a harbinger of a great apocalypse to come. Kaspersky employees were aware of how big the problem was, and when they realized how big the problem was, they quarantined the entire bank and audited all devices on the network. There was never any news coming out in any way. No media outlet knew about it. Because these events could have led to a rebellion. There should have been no news out there, and in order to solve this case, the Kaspersky people went through all the networks, phones, everything, and they found nothing. But one computer was different from the others, and it held a clue. One computer they found had a remote access program installed on it. If you have the username and password from the database you will connect to in these programs, you can connect to that computer wherever you are in the world and do everything. That actually explains why the domain controller was hacked. So antivirus experts think that someone at the bank installed a remote access program on a computer and gave it to their contacts in China and helped with the hack. And they questioned every computer in the bank, the owners of the computers, their phones and all the devices that used the bank's network. At the end of this questioning they could not even find the name of the program. While Kaspersky employees were in shock, something strange started to happen on the streets of Russia. The bank's ATMs were spilling money. No cards were inserted in any way, even if there was no physical contact, money was coming out of the ATMs, and people with fully masked faces, whom they called field agents, were collecting this money from the ATMs, putting it in their bags and disappearing. The group that owned the domain controller was ordering money out of the ATMs connected to the bank, and they were doing it in a planned way. The bank and Kaspersky employees could only see the shortage of money on the screen. They stole $7.3 million from all the bank's ATMs in a few hours. They had just started, they didn't stop, they kept going. Again overnight, the bank system was infiltrated, the domain controller was found and $10 million were stolen through the SWIFT system. Then the same news came from another bank in another country and even another bank on another continent. Kaspersky employees failed to notice the leak and were confronted with a terrible reality. The group was everywhere, in banks in Russia, in Europe, even in Nigeria and the United States. Can you imagine the chaos when people find out? People will think that the bank they entrusted their money to is not really that safe. That's what the Europol police organization and the CEO of Kaspersky think. A few weeks after the events began, Eugene Kaspersky, CEO of Kaspersky Labs, spoke about his experience with Carbanak at a cybersecurity conference in Singapore. Then came news from the European police organization Europol that Carbanak had been spotted in banks in Europe and the United States. This was no longer an isolated case, and the whole world knew about it. People wanted their money, but the only thing the bank said was that we are working and we will help you. And then a decision was made that in order to find Carbanak and fight these attacks, a team would be formed consisting of the attacked banks, Kaspersky Labs, the European police organization, different cybersecurity experts, and put an end to these attacks. The name of the team would be JCAT. That is, the Joint Cybercrime Action Task Force. The first thing they have to do is discover Carbanak. Carbanak simply creates a backdoor into the computer. When they examined the computers, they found the file location where Carbanak copies itself. Carbanak copies itself into the COM folder of System 32 under the name Coast and turns itself into a hidden file. Then a Kaspersky employee found a very small bug in Carbanak's code. According to this bug, if they sent a specific message to Carbanak's control server, they would get a specific response. They had a very big problem compared to the smallness of the bug. That problem was that they had to send this message to Carbanak's control server. Nobody knew where Carbanak's control server was physically located, what address it was at. That would mean Kaspersky employees would have to search the entire internet. They would have to search every network, every IP, every device on the internet and send the same specific message to all of them and hope for a response. It sounds impossible. About 2 days later there was a reply from Carbanak's control server. Maybe the experts had found a clue. The server was in the Netherlands, which is best for technology companies. In just a few minutes, the police found and raided the location where the server was located and invited experts to inspect it. When the experts arrived at the location and inspected the server, they found a fact that made their blood run cold. While they were trying to find out all these things, the gang was not content with Russia and Europe. They literally attacked all the banks, including the United States and Turkey. And by the time it was discovered, the group had already stolen $700 million. When confronted with this reality, all intelligence services, including the FBI and the KGB, began a joint investigation into the incident. And that's when the Carbanak group made the biggest mistake of their hacking careers. 2016 Taiwan. The big heist was going on, the whole world was being robbed, but two inexperienced crooks in Taiwan made a big breakthrough. While collecting money from a hacked ATM, they saw a citizen coming to the ATM to withdraw money and they got so nervous that they left 60,000 Taiwan dollars at the mouth of the ATM and ran away. The citizen thought it was too suspicious after seeing two masked men leaving such a large amount of money and called the Taiwanese police to inform them. The police monitored all the cameras that went to that ATM and came across a horrible truth. These two were the field agents of the Carbanak group and they had stolen a total of $70 million in one night. But the duo had a vulnerability: they were in a hurry and they were on camera too much. They were talking about two ATM robbers on all the channels when they didn't even know they were about to be caught. But how can you find two people in masks? Taiwan police continued their investigations and found 22 suspects in the case. But 19 of those 22 suspects had already left the country. Carbanak was always one step ahead. But the Latvian Andreas Peregudovs was still in Taiwan. Andreas immediately left 2 suitcases of money in the mountainous region of Taipei. The other 2 robbers left 2 suitcases of money in the lockers at the Taipei train station and returned to the hotel. But the Taiwanese police were there and Andreas Peregudovs was caught. The bad thing is that these guys were field men and they didn't know anything. So the Carbanak was never found. They could never stop them. They continued robberies under the names Cobalt, Carbanak 2, Fin 7, Joker Stash, Cobalt Spider. And finally, I would like to say, Carbanak Nightmare returns.